Buzz, 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 and welcome back to the Yellowjackets Hive. I'm your host, Emily, and I apologize for running a couple minutes late, guys. My husband was on a work call and it pushed me back a little bit, but here we are. And we are here continuing the character deep dive series. And this month, we are going to dive deep into the world of Taissa Turner. Hi, Dustin. Hi, Aaron. Hi, Angie. Hi, guys. Thank you for being here. Um, hey, Aaron. So, as we get into Ty, what's the first word that comes to mind when you think about Ty and her character, like who she is at her core? Determined, overachiever, pragmatic. All of those definitely fit, both in her teen years and her adult years. But the word that stands out the most for me is layered. I mean, she literally has an entire separate personality, aka other Ty. Another great word would be complex. We've seen her determination play out across both timelines again and again. I mean, she sacrificed her own dog just to secure her Senate seat. Twisted, for sure, but also incredibly determined. That alone shows just how far that she's willing to go, how extreme she'll push herself to be the best. And that also kind of overlaps with being an overachiever. Yeah, Dustin, she's super complicated. I think she's the most complicated character on the show. I mean, just with the presence of other Ty, like Tawny Cypress pretty much plays. I mean, other Ty is Ty, but at the same time, she's different. So Tawny Cypress is playing two characters, kind of. Hi, Kennedy. Uh, it's like Ty's ambition has no off switch. And it's been really fascinating to go back and rewatch Ty's journey from season 1 until now in season 3. It's so much more apparent to me just how present other Ty has been this entire time. She's been woven in from the start, even when we didn't fully realize it. And I didn't fully realize it until I just started rewatching the show again after seeing season 3 in its entirety, I guess. So, when we first meet Ty in season 1, I got the impression that she was someone who takes charge when she's faced with uncertainty. She was incredibly strong-willed, maybe even a little impulsive. I mean, hello, slide tackling Allie. That was wild. But it also showed how willing she was to step in and take control, something that absolutely carried out after the crash. Ty has remained pragmatic for the most part, although I still can't wrap my head around why she objected to rescue in season 3. Like, just make it make sense for me. As an adult, her journey has been more of like a full on unraveling. She seems incredibly put together when we first meet her in the present day, but as the story unfolds, we see that other Ty has been creeping back in, and the more that the survivors reconnect with each other, the worse that it seems to get. And we will break down other Ty in depth later, kind of as we go through, and then I have a little bit at the end too, because she's obviously a major part of Ty's arc. Ty's story has been packed with twists and turns, from the start of her sleepwalking in the wilderness, to her killing her dog to win an election, to nearly killing her wife in a car crash, to reconnecting with her long lost high school sweetheart. She's been through it, guys. No doubt about that. So now I'll go through her full arc throughout each season one by one. Start with season 1, start with the teen timeline, then go on to adult timeline and go through. You guys know we've done this for 2 characters now. So for season 1 in the teen timeline, our introduction to teen Ty in season 1 went off quite a bang. The first time that we see her, she's in a heated debate with Nat about fixing the alley problem. Ty throws out one of my favorite insults. You smell like a wino. Get your shit together. Classic Ty. She calls Allie a liability and suggests freezing her out so she doesn't have a chance to screw things up. But the others don't really agree with her. So, during practice, Ty switches teams to put pressure on Allie, and we all know what comes next. Allie's leg snaps like a toothpick. In the locker room afterwards, Jackie tries to rally the team together and she kind of fails miserably. And Laura Lee starts chiming in with, "The Lord works in mysterious ways." And Nat's response is, "Nice work, Taissa," slams her locker shut, storms out. Ty knows they're all upset with her. That night at the pre-nationals party, Shauna confronts Ty about the injury, calling her a sociopath. Takes one to know one, Shipman. And they end up kind of scuffling with each other. Ty unilaterally decided to take her out. Yes, Dustin, absolutely. Jackie then steps in, trying to unite everyone, and she makes them all say something nice about each other. And Jackie starts, and she starts with Ty. And she says, "Taissa Turner, you have more fight in you than anyone I've ever known. I'm inspired by your determination." Same, Jackie, same. Ty and Shauna later apologize to each other, with Ty insisting that she never meant to hurt Allie. And the next morning, Ty says goodbye to her parents and she goes off to the Flight of Doom. Right after the crash, Ty's one of the first to reach the emergency door, working to pry it open, and with help, she gets it. Almost everyone stumbles out. Ty runs wild looking for Van, who's still trapped inside, and after Misty chops off Coach Ben's leg, Misty starts rambling about what she did, and Ty's the one that shuts that down real quick. "You really want to tell him that you chopped his leg off with a fucking axe?" Ty takes out Allie with a soccer slide. Ty takes out adult Melissa with a soccer slide. True. She doesn't take out the blackmailer with a slide, though. She straight up tackles the blackmailer, aka Jeff. Later, Mari tells Ty she did Allie a favor, breaking her leg, which is facts. And after Coach Martinez's fall out of the tree, the group holds a funeral for him, the other victims, and yes, Coach Ben's leg. During the prayer, Ty has a flashback to visiting her grandma as a kid. We eventually, in the course of this flashback, see the man with no eyes, and we hear her grandmother screaming, "Don't let him take my eyes," which was so creepy. And Ty then bounces from the prayer, says she's going for a walk, and she ends up finding the lake. When she tells the group, Jackie objects, but for the first time, the group puts it to a vote, and Ty's side wins. They hike to the lake, and luckily it ends up being real, not a mirage, like Jackie said that it was over the course of their hike. While the group enjoys a swim, Ty braids Akila's hair, and Akila says that she knows that Ty has JV fooled because she knows that Thais is not that much of a bitch. And that's when Lottie notices a shimmer in the tree line, and they discover the cabin. Lottie is instantly uneasy about going inside the cabin, and she only goes in after Ty kind of pressures her to. That night, Ty then finds Lottie in the attic, sitting crisscross applesauce, staring at Cabin Daddy's dead corpse, surrounded by the mysterious symbol carved into the floor. We then see the group kind of settle into survival mode. Water runs, chopping wood, hunting. And then Ty catches Shauna dipping her pad into runoff blood from a deer that they had killed. She clocks that information, but she keeps it to herself. We get our first Ty Van moment, hiding behind a tree for some alone time until Mari's screaming that she thinks, I'm pretty sure she thought a bug crawled into her shirt or something like that, start interrupting them. Jackie then suggests a seance, and though Ty scoffs at the idea, she ends up joining in. And of course, chaos follows. Lottie freaks everyone out, and Ty tries to calm things by saying that she'll go and sleep in the attic to prove that there's nothing up there. Shauna joins, and this is when Ty asks Shauna if she's pregnant, promising to keep her secret, not yet knowing who the baby's father is. Ty and Van share some sweet moments, like at the waterfall, and this is when Ty tells Van that she wants to go out and look for help, believing that they just can't stay put. Like, they know what's going to happen if they don't get help. And when she learns about the truth about Shauna's baby daddy, she urges Shauna not to do anything drastic about it. And when Shauna tries to do something, Tai stops her in one of the most powerful moments of the show, like thus far, in my opinion. After the maggot deer incident, Tai sets off to find help with Van, Misty, Mari, and Aquila. And we all know how this goes. Red stream, weirdness, wolf attack on Van. And they return to camp to save Van, and Laura Lee makes her ill-fated plane ride, or plane attempt, I should say. At Doomcoming, Ty and Van debut their relationship publicly, wearing the masks that Ty had made for them after Van was attacked by the wolf to show her that she wanted her to feel comfortable, which I just thought was just so sweet. I still love that moment so much. Then comes the mushroom trip, hunting Travis, and Van challenging Ty's need to rationalize everything. Ty tries to stop Jackie and Shauna's epic fight as it goes down. She tells Jackie she doesn't have to go outside, but Jackie's pretty much like you didn't want this to happen the entire fucking time. Which, why would Ty want that to happen? And that's really the last that we see of Ty in season 1, is her consoling Shauna after they find Jackie dead outside. So we'll move on to the adult timeline. And our first glimpse of Ty is actually via Shauna, who sees her campaign commercial on TV. Then we cut to Ty at a photo shoot with Simone and Sammy for a magazine spread promoting her run for office. And Simone seems a little uneasy at the shoot, so Ty jokes around to lighten the mood, suggesting they have a quickie in the bathroom or maybe take some shots. I think she said something like that. Which definitely works, and they start vibing, and the photographer praises that and ends up referring to Ty as the queer Kamala, adding that he doesn't believe any of those nasty stories that he hears about her. And Ty kind of brushes it off and says that she wants to focus on their collective future, not her past. And the photographer's like, ooh, soundbite, love it. And next, we see Ty meeting Shauna at a diner. Shauna tells her that Jessica Roberts has been snooping around asking questions, and Ty kind of downplays it, saying that people like this always show up whenever an anniversary comes up. But Shauna pushes back, clearly hinting that things are different now that Ty is running for office. We agreed. Say no more than we have to. Stay out of the public eye. And Shauna kind of gives Ty shit for running for office, and Ty doesn't really defend it either, now that I think about it. Shauna then asks if Ty has heard from Nat, and she says she has, and that yes, Natalie is in rehab again. No sign of the others, though, hasn't been in months, and Shauna kind of reassures Ty that they're going to be fine as long as no one does anything crazy, which, take your own advice, Shauna. The next time we see Ty, she's coming home with takeout to bribe Sammy and Simone after missing Sammy's parent-teacher conference due to campaign strategy meetings. It works on Sammy, but Simone, not so much. And Simone tells Ty that Sammy's teacher is concerned because Sammy seems to be having trouble making friends. And Ty jokes around, asking, are we sure the other kids don't suck? And says to Simone that she was a loner too, and there's nothing wrong with a little self-reliance. When Ty wonders aloud if public school was a mistake, Simone reminds her that public education is a core part of her platform, and they can't bail on the public system. What kind of message would that send to all of the people that she wants to vote for her? So they then kiss, and Sammy kind of catches that and looks at them really oddly, deeply uncomfortable, almost scared. Later, Ty sits at her desk examining the same creepy postcard that Nat and Misty both received. Simone interrupts. Sammy wants Ty to read to him. But Sammy tells Ty that he's tired of books, and he refuses her suggestion to go to the park because he says that he doesn't have any friends. And Ty reassures him that she's her friend. To cheer him up, she starts casting shadow puppets on the wall. And when she makes a wolf, something about it triggers kind of almost like a visceral flashback for her, and she freezes. Spooked, she tells Sammy that they're going to go for a walk around the block. And then she goes to open the curtains in his room. And when she does, she notices that his window is covered in bizarre, creepy drawings. She asks him why he did this, and he says, "So she can't see me." And Ty asks, "So who can't see you?" And he says, "The lady in the tree. She watches me at night." Ty asks him to explain, like, "Look at me and tell me what you mean." But all he says is, "Sammy, Sammy, Sammy." And to this day, I still have so many questions about those damn drawings. I still wonder about those. I still want to know where he got the idea for half of them, if he had ever heard anything about Ty and she just didn't know. Like, where the hell did that is one vivid imagination on a kid for him to come up with that kind of stuff all on his own at that young of an age. It was just so graphic and gruesome, and Sammy must have had dreams or premonitions. Maybe that's a possibility. I want to know. I don't want Sammy to be gone out of the story because he was so creepy and I felt like he added so much to the plot line for Ty. But anyway, so she later, while she's can Sammy communicate with other Ty? He has communicated with other Ty. He's spoken to her, I'm pretty sure. Like, he can distinguish when it is other Ty and when it's not. So he has to be able to communicate with her, unless she just doesn't talk or something when she's like that. But we know she talks because we've seen her talk. The redheaded woman he drew was clearly a man. Yeah, I think so too. But later, while reading campaign emails, Ty gets a new attack ad from her opponent, Phil Bathurst. Simone calls him a Mitch McConnell wannabe, but it clearly rattles Ty. Sorry, guys. At the park, she calls Jessica Roberts, demanding progress in her investigation, saying, "If there's an October surprise coming, I'm fucked." And Jessica kind of offers Ty a little tidbit, telling her, like, "If you want to hit back, I have some intel." Bathurst's daughter is a junkie and she's over 18, so she's fair game if you want to throw that out there. But just then, Ty sees a commotion and she has to hang up mid sentence. And Sammy has punched another kid in the face and knocked him off the playground. Back home, Ty explains to Simone that Sammy overheard someone call her a cannonball. Ty worries that this kind of chaos could be their new normal unless she hits back. And Simone isn't impressed by that. She doesn't want Ty to do that. Ty then confronts Sammy about hitting the boy, saying that they need to talk about it. And Sammy tells her no. And she's like, "Excuse me, what did you say to me?" And he replies back with, "Be quiet," which I know we haven't spent a lot of time with Sammy, but that kind of seemed out of character for him to talk to her like that, unless he thought he was dealing with other Ty. Uh, so eventually, Ty ends up taking away Manny, his doll, and sends him to his room for his behavior. That night, Nat calls Ty from jail after breaking into Travis's, and this time Ty refuses to help. She later checks in on Sammy, who is still very much upset. She tells him that when people do bad things, they deserve to be punished, and she asks him if he agrees, and he says yes. But she promises him that he can have Manny back in the morning. Then Sammy asks her, "Why don't people like you?" And Ty replies, "I'm different from what they expect, and it scares them." He tells her, "I know, you're not the bad one." And she then asks, "Is someone else the bad one?" And he just kind of shakes his head no and says goodnight, which obviously she doesn't understand. But then we see her go into her office and give Phil Bathurst a little phone call. She pretty much threatens him and tells him if he doesn't shut his mouth, she's going to spill the beans on his junkie daughter. "Don't fuck with me, Phil." I wouldn't fuck with her. We then see her wake up on the couch suddenly, and for some unknown reason, she heads to the basement where she finds Manny smashed on the floor. Which, going back, I feel like that had to be other Ty, right? Because why would Sammy smash his own doll. Not to mention, when Ty takes it from him, she puts it up on a shelf, so Sammy wouldn't even have been able to reach it, to grab it, to put it on the ground and smash it. So, did she, in this state, destroy the doll for some reason? Like, why? It seems like she would have an understanding, like, of other Ty in the adult stages. But yeah, like, do you guys think that was other Ty, the destruction of Sammy's doll? But later, Ty is prepping for a fundraiser event with Diane Raffleson. And we see Sammy hiding in the wardrobe as Ty and Simone are kind of going through and memorizing Diane Raffleson's numerous properties, which I don't understand why you would ever need to know that, but I'm not in politics. And they eventually see him hiding in the wardrobe after Ty says a bad word, and she apologizes for that. He climbs out of the wardrobe and he kind of like eerily stares her down as he leaves the room, like when they tell him to go finish his dinner. It's like he I feel like he knows when it's not Ty, you know what I mean? So at the event, a roasted pig on a platter triggers another hallucination. Ty sees a deer head on the platter instead. Then she sees a wolf striding through the venue where the party's happening. And this is the moment that she chooses to go find a quiet corner and catch her breath and smoke a cigarette. So, and this is when she's approached by Diane Raffleson. It seems like she hadn't experienced other Ty in a long time, likely since the wilderness, even if other Ty still emerged after the rescue. I agree. I think it's been a really long time since other Ty has made herself known. Yeah, I agree. But so Diane Raffleson approaches her and tells Ty that with the right support, like, she could reach for the stars. She just needs to find her people. And she pretty much says, like, I'll be your girl if you tell me what I want to know. And she asks Ty what really happened out there. Ty starts to give the standard story, the same song and dance that they gave everyone else, but Diane cuts her off, like saying, like, I've already heard that version. I want to know the truth. And Ty claps back at her, like saying, like, why do you get to have that? Because you're rich and powerful. And Diane then goes on to say that she should be thankful to her for all that she's done for Black causes and Black women's causes and women's causes. And is basically telling Ty that she should be kissing her ass. And she ends it with, you need to watch your tone. So Ty responds back with, I'll perfectly calibrate my tone as I tell you to go fuck yourself. Love that moment so much. I honestly believe Ty summoned the wilderness with her checking on the other Yellowjackets. That's an interesting thought, Dustin. I wonder. I like that. But, so yeah. Ty's great. And I loved her putting Diane Raffleson in her place, because people like that just think because they have money that they're entitled to everything. It's just, no. Maybe that is the way the world works, but I don't think it's how it should be. I love this response to her. She isn't for sale. So the next morning, Ty's trailing in the polls and Simone is frustrated. Ty tries to explain why. Oh, wait, I think I skipped something. Oh, yeah. So then we see the whole. I really missed something in my notes here, guys. After that, we then see Ty and Simone take Sammy trick-or-treating. And they come back to the house, and as Ty is putting away Sammy's Halloween costume, something catches her eye. And, oh wait, I missed another thing. That she saw the spill painted on her house. Sorry guys. So as she's going into Sammy's closet, something catches her eye under his bed, and when she bends over to take a closer look, she realizes that it's a can of red paint, the same color paint that was on their door. So she brings it to Sammy. Ty and Simone question him, ask him why he painted that word on their door. He denies having any responsibility for it because, as we know, he wasn't responsible. And he starts to get upset and he eventually storms off. And after Simone gets him to bed, they start having a conversation about Ty dropping out. And Ty asks Simone if she thinks that she should drop out. And Simone's basically like, I would never tell you to do that. I just don't want you to have any regrets. And Ty tells her that she will make an announcement. So she makes the announcement, as we all know, and what started as an announcement to concede and drop out ended up being other Ty taking over and reaffirming her dedication to this race and putting the spill on full display for the general public and blaming Phil Bathurst's supporters for it, and basically saying, like, I'm not going anywhere, to Simone's utter shock because that was not what they had discussed. So the next morning, Ty tries to explain to Simone why she didn't drop out. She says something like, I felt like I'd be giving up on us. And Simone kind of says, like, you lied straight to my face. Like, that the woman that I saw at that conference was not the woman that I married. And it's revealed that Simone had scheduled an appointment with a child psychiatrist for Sammy without telling Ty, which Ty's like, how could you do that without telling me? Which, really? And at the appointment, the psychiatrist says Sammy's behavior could be linked to a number of things, including psychogenic fugue or dissociative amnesia. Other Ty did the writing. Yes, I agree. Other Ty did the writing, Dustin. And Other Ty put it under his bed. I agree, Kennedy. But what would possess her to frame her own son for something like that? Like, that's messed up. That's real messed up. So, and as the psychiatrist is mid-sentence telling them what's going on with their child, Ty's phone buzz, and rudely, she looks at it as the psychiatrist is talking, which I thought was in very poor taste. And in the car on the way home, Simone kind of is like, so do you have anything to add, or were you too busy checking your inbox? And they get into a little kind of an argument, I guess you could say, with Ty saying that shrinks make their living off of problems that don't get solved. And Simone says something like, for somebody who went through their own shit, it amazes me how closed off you are to any form of help, which, true. And as they're arguing, Ty nearly runs over a guy on a bicycle while she's distracted. And then we see her outside of Sammy's window as the lady in the tree. She gets the blackmail text from the blackmailer. She meets with Natalie about it, and it's determined that she'll be the one to try to get the money because, I mean, we all, watching it the first time, we all assumed Ty would be the one with the money with the job that she had. So Ty later tells Nat that she can't, in fact, get the $50K because she needs Simone to co-sign, and things are obviously tense between the two. So, oh wait, I messed up my notes. I'm just going to keep going. Sorry, guys. I'm a little jumbled. I didn't really prepare as well for this as I normally do. So I didn't have a chance to read through my notes, and I'm seeing that I made a couple mistakes. So I apologize for that. But so the next day, Ty, Nat, and Shauna all meet up to do the money drop with the blackmailer. Nat insists on doing it alone, and she uses Ty's car. While Ty and Shauna wait, Ty reflects on funding Nat's rehab, and Shauna kind of gives her shit for paying for it, saying, like, you need to let her handle her own shit. And Taissa kind of looks to Shauna and is like, essentially like, we both have families. Like, what do we do to deserve that? Like, who does Natalie have? No one. And now that Travis is gone, she has even less. So Nat then crashes their little party with a bottle of liquor that she bought from a gas station attendant in the middle of the night, which I imagine is no easy feat in New Jersey, considering their liquor laws. That's true. We didn't know the hostility between the two then, Dustin. That's very true. So, the three attempt to make small talk, which they fail miserably at, until Nat shares a little tidbit about sleeping with Kevin Tan. But then the tracker starts to move, and then they start to move. They chase the blackmailer into a store, and Ty tackles him, saying, "I'll mark him," just like it states. And she does tackle him, but she gets an elbow to the nose, and he ends up escaping covered in glitter. Nat shoots at him, misses because Ty shoved her arm to the side at the very last second, and the blackmailer, aka Jeff, ends up driving off with the cash. Later, Ty shows up at Shauna's house, and they go for a walk, and Ty opens up about the fact that her sleepwalking started again. And she says that Biscuit is missing, and she's afraid that she's the one that let him out of the house, and that she's really scared. And Shauna invites Ty to stay the night at her house. They talk about who they could have been if the crash had never happened. Shauna reveals that she was going to go to Brown, which I wonder if she kept that information to herself all that time, because that letter was hidden, if you remember, her acceptance letter to Brown. But anyway, and then Ty goes on and she starts listing off her accomplishments and says that none of it ever really felt real. Back home, she then confesses to Simone that she thinks she let Biscuit out during a sleepwalking episode. And Simone starts to say, like, "Oh, we can get you help. Like, everything will be okay." And Ty freaks out, like, "You can't be here. Like, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt you. You need to leave." So she tells Simone, Jeff knew about the Brown acceptance. True. Okay. But Jeff could have kept that to himself and never told anyone else. And so then Simone and Sammy eventually end up leaving. On election day, Ty reveals to her campaign manager that Simone and Sammy have moved out. And her campaign manager was basically like, "Oh, well, campaigns are hell even on the best of marriages. Like, she'll come around." And Ty does not agree with her. And then we see the group attend the reunion, and I'm assuming this is the next day. We see Ty at her campaign headquarters, where the results of the election are about to be announced. And she gets a call from Simone saying that she's going to stop by the house while Ty isn't there on purpose, so she doesn't have to run into her. And as she hangs up, her campaign manager is like, "You need to come. The results are going to be announced really soon." And as they're listening to the results, it's intercut with Simone entering the house at the same time. And just as they make the announcement that Ty, in fact, won the election, Simone makes the horrifying and gruesome discovery of Biscuit's head on a freaking sacrificial altar in a hidden room in her basement. And we see Ty smile a really, like, it was evil. Like, it was an evil smile, if you ask me. And that's the last that we see of Ty in season 1. And man, going back through and like rereading and retalking about the previous seasons is bringing up new questions for me, which I know our questions will probably never get answered. They're just questions that pop up in my head, but it's always fun to think about. So we'll move on to season 2, the teen timeline. We pick up with Ty in season 2 out in the wilderness. She and Van are in the attic discussing their newfound sleeping arrangements, which are them tying themselves together with a rope at night so that Ty can't wander off in her sleep. And then later, we see them actually asleep when Ty suddenly wakes up and starts kissing Van. But it's quickly turns aggressive, so much so that she bites Van's lip and ends up drawing blood. This causes Van to cry out, and the sound snaps Ty out of it. She wakes up and she's shocked and embarrassed by what she's done, and immediately says that the whole rope thing was a terrible idea. And Van, being her ever loyal self, reassures Ty, saying that she's not scared of Ty. She never has been, never will be. And to prove it, she uses her own blood to write out "I heart you" on Ty's forearm, saying it between the two for the first time. And Ty kind of pokes fun at her, like, and that's really how you want to say that to me for the very first time? And Van asks her, like, well, don't you have something you want to say to me too? And Ty then tells Van that she loves her too. The next morning or day, the group is waiting on Shauna to bring in food from the meat shed, and Mari, being Mari, suggests that they eat her share to teach her a lesson. Ty immediately jumps in to defend Shauna, saying that's not happening. Then she notices that the cabin smells exceptionally ripe, and she takes a peek inside the pee bucket and realizes that there's not just pee in there. And she's pissed, no pun intended, when she realizes that whoever dealt it didn't deal with it. So she demands the culprit fess up, and when no one does, she takes it upon herself to go dump it. That night, Van wakes up to find Ty gone. Somehow, Ty managed to slip the ropes off, and Van luckily can track her footprints because there's snow on the ground, and finds her being led through the woods by the man with no eyes. She doesn't know she's being led by the man with no eyes yet, but we know. Just as Ty is about to walk off the edge of Shit Cliff, Van tackles her to the ground, and Ty wakes up, obviously terrified. Back at the cabin, Ty tells Van that the last thing that she remembers is going to dump the pee bucket, eating her dinner, and then going up to the attic and going to sleep. Van asks if something is bothering her, and Ty brings up the whole Shauna talking to a dead corpse situation. Van takes this moment to remind her that she herself is not exactly the picture of normalcy either. And Van suggests that they go to Lottie. Ty shuts that idea down immediately, and that's it. Kibosh on that. Van then wraps herself around Ty in their little sleeping area, and she tells Ty, like, if you move a muscle now, I will know. A little later, curiosity gets the better of Ty when she sees Shauna leave the meat shed. So she goes in to check things out, and what she finds is horrifying. Jackie's corpse, covered in makeup and posed like a doll. Ty freaks out, rightfully so, and she tells the other what Shauna's been up to with her spare time and her extracurricular activities. And she asked Lottie if this kind of behavior is considered normal, which, spoiler, it's not. Ty tells Shauna that it needs to stop. Like, what's going on can't be good for her or the baby. And Shauna's like, any of you have any idea what's any good for my baby? And Ty makes the decision for the group that they're going to cremate Jackie's body so that it does stop once and for all. We then see Ty and Lottie carry Jackie's body to the funeral pyre. The group argues about whether to take Jackie's clothes, and Shauna is like, none of you are taking anything from her. Mari makes a nasty comment about how it's too late to play Jackie's protector now, which leads to Ty, Van, and Lottie breaking up another scuffle between Mari and Shauna. Their beef goes a lot further back than I realized. Shauna then gives her final goodbye to Jackie and lights the fire. And that night, the group is awakened by a strange smell. Jackie, now fully and perfectly cooked. Starving and desperate, they obviously begin to eat. And the next morning, Tai steps outside and is appalled by what she sees and frankly confused because she doesn't remember. She asks Van what happened, and Van calmly says, Tai, you ate her face. Love that moment too. Such a good moment. And Tai is then hit with like a flashback of what happened, and she ends up getting physically sick and starts screaming, which, girl, if I didn't remember eating one of my friends, that would be my reaction too. Later, we see Tai helping Akila build a bassinet for Shauna's baby shower, and Akila takes this moment to open up about missing her family. Tai says she's sorry to Akila for the fact that like she's missing out on important stuff. And that night, Tai begins sleepwalking again, with Van quietly following. As they walk, Van asks Tai this time where she's going. And Tai says, the man with no eyes is showing her. Van asks her, is that who you always follow? And Tai responds, only when she lets me. Which leads Van to ask, then, who is she? And Tai simply says, Taissa. Van, totally thrown, says, then who are you? And Tai just gives her a weird smile and walks off, leading them directly to another tree with a symbol carved into it. Van then wakes Tai up and tells her about what happened. Tai says that she doesn't remember any of it. At Shauna's baby shower, Tai watches Misty perform a Steel Magnolias monologue and then asks, did she really choose a scene about a dead daughter? Which, of course, she did, because it's Misty Quigley we're talking about. Then Lottie presents Shauna with a baby blanket that is embroidered with the symbol, which sparks another argument amongst them because they don't know what it means. As things begin to escalate, they hear loud thumps hitting the roof of the cabin outside. When they go outside to investigate, they find dead birds scattered all over the ground. And some of the girls start collecting them to gather its blessings per Lottie's request. But Tai sits that one out. The four-eyed mushroom, lol. Later, Tai sleepwalks again and ends up at another symbol tree. Van suggests again that they talk to Lottie. Tai once again refuses, firmly saying that this isn't any of Lottie's business. Van then shows Tai a map that she's been making of the wilderness. And she has marked on the map every place where they have found a tree with a symbol carved into it. And it has created the shape of a giant symbol out in the wilderness. Tai brushes that off, saying that you could create any shape with random points and dots. And Van tells her that if her map is correct, that there's one last tree that they need to find. And she asks Tai to come with her. They go searching and come up empty-handed. And sorry guys, when they're just about to give up, they hear rustling. So they follow the sound and they find a dirty, traumatized, but alive Javi. They bring him back to the cabin, and everyone, particularly Natalie, is shocked to find him alive. We then see Tai greet Shauna with a cheerful good morning, and Shauna is like, is it? And I think Tai says something along the lines of, was the hungry one kicking your bladder again? And Van then interrupts saying, like, come outside, it's time to start. And Shauna kind of gives Tai a look because she knows that Tai is going outside to join Lottie's circle that she started. And Tai tells her that she'll be right out. She tells Shauna not to say anything, like she's doing this solely for Van. Happy wife, happy life. Later, we see Shauna wake up from a nap to find Lottie creepily whispering to her pregnant belly. And she flips out, which I would have too. Tai tries to defend Lottie, saying that Lottie wasn't hurting anybody. And Shauna storms off. So Tai follows her and tells Shauna that even if she's going to give her the silent treatment, she's not about to leave her alone out there. So She then asks if she's supposed to apologize, and Shauna says, "You're supposed to be my friend. Like, you're supposed to have my back." And Shauna asked Ty if Ty really thinks that they're all on the same team. Or Ty says, "There's only one team." And Shauna's like, "Do you truly believe that at this point?" And Ty says she does have Shauna's back, but she also admits that for the first time in a long time, like, she's not afraid to fall asleep at night. Like, she's able to sleep without worrying she's going to wake up and go walk somewhere. Suddenly, Shauna cries out in pain as snow starts to fall pretty heavily, and Ty helps her back to the cabin just as she goes into labor. And throughout her labor, in my opinion, Ty did everything that she could within her power to support Shauna through it. But when Shauna wakes up, Ty is the one who gently has to break the news that the baby didn't make it. And Ty tries to comfort her, tries to get her to drink water, checks on her, but Shauna shuts everybody out. Ty later cries to Van, saying that she really believed that the baby was going to make it. And Van, being pragmatic, says that of course that was what they were all hopeful for, but Shauna and the rest of them are all starving and they need to wake up. And Ty says that that doesn't really sound like Van. And Van wonders why she keeps surviving all this messed up shit. Like, what is my purpose here? And Ty tells her that she's her purpose, that she needs her, and she would not be alive without her at this point anymore. After the storm clears, the group sets out to search for Crystal, who disappeared in the snowstorm. Lottie and Ty pause at the tree stump and have a conversation. And Lottie's like, "You knew where Javi was." And Ty's like, "No, I did not. It was a lucky guess." And Lottie says, "Regardless, you found him. Maybe you can find Crystal too." And Ty tells her that her sleepwalking has stopped since she has started attending Lottie's prayer circle and that the other her is gone. And Lottie tells her that she's not gone, and that's a good thing. Later, Ty discovers Akila talking to a dead mouse that she thinks is still alive. Still can't get over that reveal, even however many years later it's been since that was actually on the air. That was crazy. And then Ty's standing in front of a window in the cabin and she sees her reflection, and it's other Ty staring back at her. Very clearly, other Ty. Van asks her if she's okay, and Ty lies and says she just feels lightheaded. Then Misty announces that Lottie told her if she dies, they need to make use of her. And this prompts Ty to say, like, we need to find a way to stay alive, and it's not going to be Lottie. Then we get the first card draw, the first hunt. Poor Javi. After that, we see the group pledge allegiance to their new leader, Natalie, and Ty obviously joins in support. That night, they all wake up to find the cabin on fire, and when Ty tries to open the door, she claims that it's jammed, it's stuck, it won't open. She grabs the axe and then smashes through the door so everyone can escape to safety. She's one of the last ones out before the entire cabin goes up in flames. And I'll save this for the end. Okay. So, and that's where we leave Team Ty at the end of season 2, standing with everybody else outside that cabin wondering what the fuck just happened. She was, Kennedy. Ty was the last to leave when Shauna was breaking down. Yes, she was. All right, adult timeline of season 2. We kick off the adult timeline in season 2 with Ty at a dog shelter looking for a replacement for poor Biscuit. And lucky little Steve ends up being the chosen contestant on Will You Survive Taissa Turner today? After adopting Steve, Ty heads to Sammy's school to surprise him, and he's thrilled until Simone steps in and tells him that he needs to stay away from her. Ty asks what's going on, and Simone tells Sammy that he needs to skedaddle so that they can talk. And she confronts Ty, saying that she found that thing in the basement. And this confuses Ty because she doesn't remember that she did that. Uh, and, and Simone ends up kind of spelling it out for Ty, like, you're not well, like, there is something wrong with you. And she gives Ty an ultimatum, like, you either step down from office, get the help that you obviously need, or I'm going to go to the press. And Ty then heads home to try to figure out what Simone was talking about. And sure enough, she finds the biscuit altar in the basement. She is obviously horrified. And at that moment, Steve runs in and she scoops him up and promises him that she will do better with him, which, for your sake, Steve, I hope that's true. What follows is Ty doing everything she can to stay awake. Chugging espresso, riding her Peloton, popping prescription pills. Then she heads to the kitchen and finds Sammy there playing with Steve. She's surprised, asking him why he's there, and he tells her that he really wanted to see her, so he walked from school. Ty is touched, but says, like, did you tell your mom? And he says no. She's like, well, we obviously have to let her know. So she calls Simone to let her know that he showed up unannounced. And Simone is skeptical. And when she arrives at the house to get Sammy, the front door is mysteriously locked. Ty had dozed off, and she answers the door, confused about why the door is locked too. Sammy is not where Ty says he is, so they search the house, but he's nowhere to be found, and they head out to try to find him. Then Simone gets a call from the school. Sammy is still there. He never left. He's been waiting in the office to be picked up for over 2 hours. And you instantly see the change in Simone's face when she hears that information. She's like, oh shit, like, this is insane. Something is wrong. And she again tells Ty, like, you're very sick. Like, you need to get help. And she is just encouraging her to get help. And Ty is not really hearing her, staring at her with this evil stare. And she ends up running a red light, and they get T-boned right in the passenger side of the car where Simone is sitting. We next see Ty in the hospital, and a nurse is telling her that they may need to give Simone another transfusion. Ty then sees Sammy, who asks if Simone is going to die. And Ty then jolts awake. It was just a dream. And she asks the nurse how Simone is actually doing. And the nurse says, we're not out of the woods yet. Interesting choice of words. She then compliments the symbol or the drawing that Ty had made on Simone's hand. She says something like, that's such an interesting uh, drawing there. Where did that come from? And Simone looks and Ty sees and looks that it's on Simone's hand. And she immediately scrubs it off and says it's for protection. If it's for protection, why are you scrubbing it off? But later, we see Ty still in the hospital in front of the mirror, and she's staring at her reflection, and her reflection begins mouthing the words, go to her, back to her. And Ty's like, tell me what you want. And the reflection covers her face with its hands, exactly where Van's scars are. Next stop, Jessica Roberts' apartment. Ty tries calling her, gets no answer, so she shows up anyways, sleepwalking, and grabs a file marked Yellowjackets. When she finally wakes up, she's stranded on a country road with no gas and no idea how she got there. She checks her location, grabs the file, and starts walking. Eventually, a trucker offers her a ride, and she accepts it and finds a pen that sparks a memory, one that she pockets for later. Eventually, Ty strolls into Van's video store like it's a totally normal thing to show up at your ex's shop out of the blue after decades of not seeing each other. And Van asks her why she's there. When Ty doesn't answer, she gets the nudie pen. She sure does, Dustin. Van asks her if it's happening again, the sleepwalking. And that's when Ty hands her the pen that she took from the trucker, a throwback to Shauna and Jeff's wedding, where they pulled a pen switch prank on Mrs. Taylor. You can see her bosoms. And Van asks how bad things have gotten. So Ty fills her in on Biscuit and Sammy and Simone, and Van asks her if she's seen a sleep specialist. And Ty's like, how am I going to explain the altar in my basement to a doctor? So Ty then asks to shower. She hitchhikes across Pennsylvania and she smells like it. While freshening up, she snoops in Van's medicine cabinet and finds painkillers. She confronts Van, who explains that the medicine actually belonged to her mom, Vicky, who moved in while she was dying of cancer. Van then throws the pills away, but Ty says at least Van and her mom had come to some kind of resolution before she died. Van then is like, why are you really here? Like, you don't get to just drop an anvil on my life. And Ty then starts to say maybe she shouldn't have come. But Van tells her, like, don't make me convince you to let me help you. Like, at least have the decency to ask me for my help. And Ty finally breaks, like, I killed my dog. My wife is in the hospital. I'm fucking terrified. And Van assures her that they're going to figure it out. Later, after Ty falls asleep, other Ty makes an appearance. She kisses Van, who realizes what's happening and says, you're the other one, aren't you? And Ty responds with, this isn't where we're supposed to be. And she walks off. The next morning, Van tells Ty what happened. They discuss what it could mean. And then Ty gets a call from Misty, who fills her in on the chaos that's been happening at Lottie's compound. Cue the road trip to upstate New York. On the way, Ty calls Shauna, who doesn't answer since she's being interrogated by the police, but Jeff relays the message. And Shauna, Ty, and Van all arrive at Lottie's retreat around the same time. Once they're there, they're stripped of their phone and their belongings. And Ty asks Missy and Nat if they joined a cult. And Lottie insists it's not a cult, it's an intentional community. And each woman then it has to select a treatment. And Ty ends up getting renewal, which involves painting a barn with a tiny makeup brush, which she quickly grows tired of and confronts Lottie like, can we cut the crap? Like, this isn't fixing any of my problems. And Lottie kind of asks her, like, well, what are your problems? And Ty tells her that she's been sleepwalking again. And yes, Kennedy, that's a great one. Does Miss Congeniality go and Sandy don't? Or Sandy, yeah. I love that scene. So Lottie tells her that other Ty has wisdom and a connection to the wilderness. And Ty says, like, she wants to hurt my family. And Lottie replies with, maybe she doesn't want to hurt them. Maybe she just doesn't want to be suppressed. She's a part of you and she always will be. We later see Ty removing her wedding ring and placing it on a rock. And Van makes a joke about how marrying the rock isn't going to solve all her problems. They then share a kiss, and Ty quickly apologizes. She tells Van that she's thought about it, but it's a long road. That's when Van drops the bomb that she has cancer, and she just has a few months left to live. And Ty is obviously devastated, like asking, why didn't you tell me before? And Van was like, what reason would I have had to tell you? Like, we were not in each other's lives. And Van's like, you showed up, like, not me. Like, you came crashing into my life. Like, I was just going to die peacefully. And she says she didn't want to see that look of pity on Ty's face that she clearly was displaying in that moment. Later, the group gathers and to dance around the fire together. But before this happens, Ty tells Van that she knows a specialist at Johns Hopkins, and Van just completely brushes her off. Lightning Crashes begins to play. They all begin to dance until an acolyte comes in and tells Shauna that Jeff is on the phone, and he breaks the news that Adam's body has been found. So the women then discuss what they're going to do next, and the truth about Adam comes out, and Jeff is revealed as the true blackmailer. Misty also drops the bomb that Ty hired Jessica Roberts to investigate the rest of them, which does not go over well with Shauna. Eventually, Lottie proposes a present day hunt, claiming that it's going to solve all their problems. And Shauna agrees, but only to buy them time and to stall a little bit. So we then see them go off and start getting ready, and we see Van and Ty help making masks for the events. And Van is clearly uneasy about this entire thing. Ty insists that Lottie is sick, and Van pushes back, like, if she is, well, so are you. Uh, and it was revealed that part of their plan involved calling a crisis team to come in. And we then see Ty secretly call the crisis team, but we don't actually hear what is said on that call. And then the hunt begins. Shauna draws the queen card. She runs, terrified the group is actually going to chase her, and they do. And as they're chasing her, we hear a gunshot ring out. Callie appears, and it's revealed she's the one that shot at Lottie to protect her mom. Shauna then asks Ty where the crisis team is, and Ty reveals that she called them off, which still don't understand that. But so this obviously upsets the rest of them. And Van then says, well, it's not like Lottie's like this for no reason. Like, we essentially made her this way. And then after Natalie's tragic death, Lottie's being loaded into the ambulance, and before she's taken away, she turns to Ty and Van and says something chilling. We gave it what it wanted. It is pleased with us. You'll see. And the two stare at each other in confusion as Lottie is driven off. And that is where we leave adult Ty at the end of season 2. So moving on to the most recent season that's freshest in everyone's memory, season 3. For the teen timeline. The first we see of Teen Ty in season 3 is during a friendly game of Capture the Bone, where Mari and Shauna get into a scuffle. After the game, Van gives a little summer solstice speech commending Ty for her teepee building skills after the cabin burned down, with a little help from a couple books on wilderness survival. Coincidence? Later, Jen, Nat, and Ty and Van hold a group meeting to kind of check in with each other and see how everything's going. And Ty points out to Nat that she might want to keep an eye on the growing tension between Mari and Shauna, which Nat brushes off, saying that it's not life or death. But Ty challenges her, saying maybe that's the problem. Like, everything out there is life or death. And the next morning, the group decides that it's time to go looking for Mari, who stormed off after Shauna spit in her food the night before. Ty and Van head out to search together, but no one has any luck for obvious reasons. Mari eventually makes her way back to camp on her own, and then Shauna rallies everyone to go hunt Coach down to make him pay for allegedly burning down the cabin. And Ty thinks the whole thing is a bit much, but she still joins in the search anyways. Once they bring Ben back to camp, the group decides to put him on trial, and Ty volunteers to lead the prosecution, which I find so fascinating. She worked really hard to point that finger at Ben. Could that be because deep down, she wondered if she herself had something to do with it? Some fans even speculate that Van saw Ty burn the cabin down and has been covering for her this whole time. So Ty first calls Mari to the stand and tries to paint Coach as a predator for leading her to the cave, but fails to prove that he actually killed her because he didn't. I mean, if he had killed Mari, like, wouldn't that kind of have been the smoking gun to be like, there you go, he's guilty? Then Misty questions Shauna and throws a lot of shade her way, calling attention to the fact that Shauna clearly wasn't thrilled about Natalie being shown as their leader. Ty jumps in and redirects the questioning, highlighting that Coach did absolutely nothing to help Shauna when she went into labor. I just pressed play on a video. Brutal. After Ty loses some footing during Misty's intense questioning of Lottie, Shauna reveals to Ty that Nat knew where Coach had been hiding this whole time. So Ty then calls Nat to the stand, and Nat defends herself, saying that she didn't think that he was a danger to them. And the rest of the group clearly disagrees with that. Coach then testifies, speaking up for himself, swearing that he'd never hurt anyone. But as we know, the group wasn't hearing it. They decide his fate, and a debate breaks out over how to carry it out. Ty says, like, we can't just keep him locked up in the animal pen forever. Shauna, in full dark mode, suggests burning him alive like an old-timey witch. And they ultimately decide on death by firing squad, and they draw cards to pick who will be the one to fire the shots. And Ty is the one that ends up choosing the Suicide King, as Van dubbed it. She tries practicing her aim, but she's distracted by visions of Coach Ben very much alive and well. And Van jokes that if she shoots off his other leg, he'll definitely want to die. Ty's not amused by that because Ty asks, well, what if I miss? Ty admits, she admits that it's one thing to think someone deserves to die, but it's an entirely different thing to be the one to actually pull the trigger. And Van then suggests that maybe other Ty could take over and do what needs to be done. She even compares her to Urkel from Family Matters, which love that reference. So they try everything they can to trigger other Ty. Listening to the trees, connecting with the wilderness, even killing a rabbit, but nothing works until the moment actually arrives. As Ty raises the gun, other Ty comes to the surface and calmly says, "Don't worry, it'll be all right." And just as she's about to shoot, Lottie, Travis, and Akila show up and they put a stop to it. And Coach is spared for now. Time passes and it's clear that the seasons are shifting, and Ty tells Van it's getting colder and they might be facing a second winter out there. At least we're prepared, she says. After Nat kills Coach, the group fights about how to handle it, and Ty suggests another trial, and Shauna shuts that idea down real quick. Thankfully, Lottie steps in and appoints Shauna as their new leader, which probably saved Natalie's life in the process. Then we get the infamous barbecue scene and the introduction of Kodiak and Hannah and Edwin, and the group then sets off to find them after Lottie axes Edwin in the back of the head. While searching, Ty and Van stumble upon the scientist camp, and at first, they get really excited when they see that sat phone there, but turns out to be broken. And Ty tries to be positive, saying, well, at least we have supplies for the village. But Van's like, we don't need supplies. We need to go home. What are you not understanding? She wants out of there. So they regroup with Shauna and Nat, who have found Hannah, and Shauna wants to kill her immediately, but Ty pushes back, saying that they need to talk to the group first. And they return to camp with Hannah in tow. The group bombards her with questions. Ty asks if anyone is still looking for them, and Hannah admits that she doesn't know. They have been missing for a long time. When Misty arrives back at camp, revealing that she knows where Kodiak is, the group sets out to find them, leaving Ty in charge of watching over Hannah and Lottie for the time being. When they get back, it's revealed that Kodiak can actually lead them to civilization. So the group starts packing their shit. And Ty then approaches Van and asks her what's going to happen if we can't be together back in the real world. And Van's like, well, why wouldn't we be able to? And Ty's like, well, do you really think that much has changed since we've been out here? And Van's like, I'm optimistic. And Ty is obviously really skeptical, and she warns that they're going to have to lie about a lot to cover what they've done. This place will follow us for the rest of our fucking lives, which, agree. Yes, it will. Later, when the group is ready to leave the village, Lottie, Shauna, and Ty suddenly refuse. Ty says that she's been feeling the same unsettling feeling that both Lottie and Shauna have been feeling since those strangers came into their camp. She says that they can't leave with so many loose ends to tie up. And Van then confronts Ty, asking if she really meant it about eventually leaving. And Ty says she did, but not if that means destroying their lives. Van begs her to remember what their first winter was like. And Ty's like, yeah, but we survived. And Van hits back with, we ain't a fucking kid. It was dark, and you need to remember that. So they prepare, then we see them preparing for the hunt again. Ty tells Van that they can't leave it to chance this time. Van resists ringing the draw, but Ty points out that they've done it before for chores. This time, it's a life or death matter, and Ty brings up Hannah and questions if they can really trust her or not. During the draw, Shauna switches spots and gets suspicious of Ty. And once the hunt begins, Ty and Shauna team up to go after Mari. They follow diverging footprints, and Ty suggests that they split up, but Shauna refuses. She then accuses Ty of trying to help Mari escape, and she calls Ty out on rigging the cards. And this is the only time in my recollection that anyone has stood up to Shauna in the teen timeline. Ty gets in her face and she's like, essentially like, if you know what's good for you, you'll back the fuck up. And Shauna does. Like, Ty is the only one that seems to be able to reason with this crazy version of Shauna. But, and then at that moment, Jen shows up and tells Ty that Van is hurt and asks her for help to get her back to the village. But Shauna calls it a trick, saying that she just wants to get them to separate. Ty's like, well, if you really think it's a trick, why don't you just come with us? And Shauna backs down if you challenge her. She didn't, but when Melissa was arguing with her in front of all of them, she shot a gun at Melissa. Like, I didn't think that was backing down in that instance. I feel like Ty is the only one it works with. Like, when we first meet them at the beginning of season 1, like, when she sees Ty in the diner for the first time, or not the first time, when she's with Natalie and Ty, when they start talking about the blackmailer and Natalie brings up Jessica Roberts, Sean is like, I thought I told you to take care of her. Like, she was the one in charge. You know what I mean? If you get her alone, she will. She felt threatened and had to respond in front of everyone. True. Yeah, I know people like that. So eventually Shauna's like, just go. And when Ty goes, it's revealed that Jen was lying because she wanted to give Mari a fighting chance at survival. And after this, Van pretty much breaks down to Ty. Like, they just lost one of their friends that they've known since they were kids. And Ty assures Van, like, we did everything that we could in our power to keep our people safe, and it just didn't work out. And that's really the last big moment that we get with Teen Ty in season 3. Like, we know she's present at the Cannibal Council feast, but we don't actually, like, have a moment with her there. So that's where things stand for Teen Ty at the end of season 3. So now for the adult timeline of season 3. We first see adult Shauna in season 3 at Nat's funeral alongside Van, Shauna, and Jeff. And after the service, they head to a bar to have a few drinks, where Ty notes that neither Lottie nor Misty bothered to show up. Well, I mean, Lottie was institutionalized, but Misty, like, that's your BFF. Once Ty gets back home, she gets a call from Simone, who still refuses to let her speak to Sammy. And Simone claims Sammy doesn't want to talk to her, but Ty shoots back that it's actually Simone who doesn't want them talking, and Simone hangs up. Van checks in, and Ty admits that she's not okay, but she points out that Van isn't either. And Van makes a comment about how doing shots in the middle of the day when you're dying of cancer isn't really a great idea, which is a fair point. Then Ty starts to give her grief about the stack of paperwork that she had for her to fill out and that Van hasn't signed any of it yet. And Van said she signed the DNR. What more does Ty want? Ty then asks Van like why they just can't be together already. It's been weeks. And Van reminds her that she's still very much married to Simone. So, as a consolation, Ty offers to take her to dinner somewhere ridiculously expensive and she's paying. So they go out, but Van is unimpressed with the restaurant choice, and Ty suggests they dine and dash, throwing it back to a wild memory from their youth. And Van's in. So they sneak out, get chased out by the waiter through the city, and they finally lose him. And they end up making out in an alley. Super romantic until Ty sees the man with no eyes watching over them. She tries to ignore it and goes back to kissing Van, but there he is. Later, Ty finds Van belting out karaoke in the living room, and they agree to settle the bill, but not before Van steps on a glass that cuts her foot, which lands her in the doctor's office. Ty insists to her that she needs to go get it checked out, that someone that's in her condition needs to be precautious, which really annoyed Van. But she agrees on the condition that Ty actually goes back to the restaurant and pays the bill. So Ty does go back to the restaurant and explains that they forgot to pay. While she's waiting for the server to square things away, she spots a photo of the waiter and she asks what happened to him. And it turns out that he had a heart attack on the sidewalk and he died. Yep. Ty is clearly spooked and she leaves without paying again. Then she ends up at a church, which it turns out did not catch my attention until this last rewatch, that this is actually a memorial service for the dead waiter. Like, what? What? And Ty silently stares at the memorial, drops something into the lit candle, and she walks out. Once home, she then starts reading about the waiter online, and Van returns, and both women admit that they have something to say. Ty lets Van go first, and Van shares the news that her cancer may have stopped spreading, which obviously relieves Ty, and she kisses her. But then she immediately looks troubled, and she confesses to Van what happened with the waiter, and Van's horrified. But Ty insists that there's something to this. First Natalie, now the waiter. I know you're thinking it too. And she suggests that the waiter was a sacrifice and that Van's improved prognosis was their gift. She then lights a candle on her kitchen counter and begins chanting, "We hear the wilderness and it hears us." And Van is stunned. Her credit card. Okay, I wasn't sure what it was. Thank you. Just didn't want to say the wrong thing. Appreciate that, Ames. So later, we see them watching an old VHS tape of Pee-wee's Playhouse when a commercial for Ozzy's ice cream place comes on. And guess who's there? The man with no eyes, just chilling in the TV ad. And Ty says that she must have seen the ad as a kid, and that's where the image came from when her grandmother died. So she Googles the parlor, which is permanently closed. Doesn't matter. They go anyway. And I just have to say, I know a lot of people were really bummed about this being the origin and like the reveal of the man with no eyes, but I found it personally really satisfying because I am on team logical. I feel like there has to be a logical explanation for everything that's happening to them. And this is a very logical explanation. She saw this commercial as a child and it gave her nightmares, and that nightmare transformed into something much bigger. But so when they get there, they find it locked up and Ty takes it upon herself to break in. That would be spooky if you saw that as a kid. Yeah, it would. I agree. why would you put that in an ice cream commercial? It just not something I would. But I'm glad they did because it gave us Brody, the man with no eyes, and Brody's great. Brody is awesome. I wish I would have had him come on here with me tonight. Plus, her grandmother dying really sent that image into overdrive. Yes, because the other girls saw him too. Yeah, the girls, at least Van, Akila, and Shauna saw him in their shared vision that they had in season 3. So yeah, like he's been seen by more than one person. But I mean, if that was a local commercial, it's entirely possible that they all saw the same commercial and it manifested somehow. But that's a little bit of too much of a coincidence for me, even. But anyways, um, while they're snooping around in this ice cream shop, they hear an animal being attacked outside and they see a coyote run off with a rabbit in its mouth. And Ty whispers, "What does it want?" And Van replies, "We know what it wants. It wants more." Then we see Ty call Lottie and she asks her about the cryptic stuff that Lottie said the night that Nat died. And Lottie has no recollection of any of it, or she has a selective memory. You tell me. But she says she can't help her because she doesn't remember saying those things. So, which really frustrates Ty. And then we see Van and Ty sitting on the sidewalk in the city, holding a deck of cards. Ty pulls out the Queen of Hearts and she places it on the ground, basically inviting fate to choose a sacrifice for them. And I'm not going to lie, I did not care for this scene whatsoever. I felt like it was forced. I felt like it was too much and it was unnecessary. Like, we didn't need to see them. I don't know. It just didn't jive for me. I've said that before, though. But so eventually, a man picks up the card and they follow him all the way to his front door. And this is the moment when Van finally pulls the brakes. Like, she's like, "Are we really doing this? Like, we're going to kill some random dude that we don't know because we think it's going to keep me alive." And she makes a comment that like Ty isn't butch enough to have locksmith tools in her bag. So Ty tries the door handle and it's miraculously unlocked. So she admits to Van that she doesn't want to do this, but she wants more time with her. And Van agrees that she wants more time too, but not like this. And so Ty eventually relents and says she has a new plan. And we then see them later meet near Central Park for soft pretzels and a horse-drawn carriage ride. Super sweet. Love that. Love that they carried it over all the way from season 1 to now, from teens to adult. Love it. But next, Ty's at Misty's where Misty drops the bomb that Lottie's dead. And Ty and Van then go to lunch afterwards, and Ty is acting kind of weird. She gets a phone call from Simone who tells her that Sammy wants to see her. So Van and Ty head to the park, and we see Ty approach Sammy. Everything seems fine initially, but something clearly spooks Sammy, and he picks up Steve and he walks away from Ty, leaving her really confused. Afterwards, Van offers her apologies to Ty about it not going well with Sammy, and Ty says she needs a change of scenery, so they head to a local hotel for a staycation. In the midst of their spa day, Ty orders some room service: filet mignon, bacon cheeseburger, lobster tails, which definitely raises Van's eyebrows. Like, what is going on right now? Do you think if Ty went through it with it, Van would have? I don't know, because I felt like Van tried so hard to hold on to her humanity and like she still wanted to be a good person. So I don't know. Like, she didn't kill Melissa and she could have. So I don't know. I really don't. Uh so for all the huffing and puffing about other Ty couldn't go through with anything. That's kind of true. Well, yeah, she's done some pretty messed up stuff when you think about it, though. But so Van is rattled by this, and especially so because Shauna just called asking for a DAT tape player for some unknown reason. Ty tries to brush it off, but Van's concerned, and she makes a joke about super intense birders being into dot tapes, and this makes a light bulb go off in Van's head. So Van heads to Ty's basement to grab the tape player, and as she's down there, she hears a disconnected phone ring, and she picks it up and hears what faintly sounds like Ty's voice saying, "I can't. Help." And at this moment, Ty herself suddenly appears in the basement and asks what box cutter she should bring. Like nothing weird is going on at all. Like Van's not answering phones that aren't actually plugged in. But so they head to the Jolly Hitcher, listen to the tape that Shauna brought, and Ty says that they should destroy it. Van points out that there's probably a backup somewhere. And then Misty shows up at their hotel. Did I somehow manage to get you pregnant? Yes. Then Misty shows up at their hotel, grilling Ty about Lottie's death, and Ty denies having any responsibility. So they all go confront Shauna, who finally shares the full contents of the tape, and then they road trip to Virginia to confront the sender. On the way, Van confronts Ty about secretly visiting Lottie, and Ty admits that she wanted answers. Like, what did the wilderness is happy really mean? And Van doesn't want to hear it. Like, she tells Ty not to bring it up again. And Ty won't drop it. She's convinced that there's a connection between sacrifices and Van's cancer improving. And Van doesn't really want a part of that. Then Misty gets a message from Walter about DNA evidence that points to Shauna. So she fills Van and Ty in via text message in the same vehicle. And Shauna picks up on the fact that there's something going on. But before it's revealed that Misty is texting them from within the car, Van starts puking up blood and they have to detour to the hospital. At the hospital, Ty tells the doctors that Van has metastatic cancer so they can treat her properly. And this stuns Misty and Shauna. Like, they had no idea she was sick. And Ty stays with Van. And as she's sitting at Van's bedside, some guy starts screaming his head off, saying some crazy stuff. And Ty makes a joke that she'll kill him if he doesn't shut up, which causes Van to wake up. And she's like, no. And then Van's heart rate spikes. She starts to go into distress. And other Ty appears to Van saying, don't worry, I won't let them take your eyes. And the doctors tell Ty that Van needs a transfusion. Later, after this, they tell Ty that there is nothing else that they can do, and it's time to consider hospice. And Ty refuses to accept that news. Misty tries to offer a sense of comfort to Ty, and Ty just asks her to find the palliative care unit. And Misty was like, but I thought you didn't want to put her in palliative care. And Ty said, we don't. So they get there. Ty heads into a dying man's room, fully intending to kill him, but she can't go through with it. She screams out, which causes him to code. And she's like, does it count? I love that scene. That was so funny, that line. And they bolt. Ty returns to Van's room, which is locked, and she sees that other Ty is visiting. Ty then pleads with herself to be let in, and other Ty tells her that she never believed and she won't do what needs to be done. Van eventually wakes to Ty sitting by her side, and they leave the hospital. Driving to find Shauna, they pass a car on the side of the road, and Van makes a joke that she can't believe someone's having a worse day. And Misty recognizes the person to be Melissa. Please explain to me how Misty knew that it was Melissa under those circumstances, considering that Melissa was supposed to have died when they were teenagers. But, so they then scoop her up, and at Melissa's house, Shauna is ready to tie her up and go full murder mom. But Ty suggests that they pump the brakes for a second and talk about things. And Misty points out that the DNA under Lottie's fingernails was Shauna's, not Melissa. And Ty jumps in and defends Shauna, but eventually she ends up tying up Melissa, asking, what now? And Melissa accuses Shauna of being the real problem. And Ty's kind of like, well, we do have the whole Adam Martin situation to contend with. And Melissa kind of connects the dots from what they're saying. And she's like, you covered up a murder for her and she still acts like this and she was still wrong. And then comes the reveal that Melissa is married to Hannah's daughter, which rocks Ty and Van. They're like, you married Hannah's daughter? Which, weird. Beyond weird. So they talk next steps as to what to do with Melissa next. Van decides to step outside. When she returns, she finds Ty unconscious on the floor, and because Melissa had shut the fireplace vent, which filled the house with carbon monoxide. So Van drags Ty outside, puts an oxygen mask on her, and inside Ty's mind, she is full on battling with other Ty. Other Ty tells her that she needs to hang up the phone, that she's not what Van needs. And Ty eventually wins the fight, wakes up and tells Van, it's me. And Van knows that it's her. She's relieved. So Van goes back inside to save Shauna and try and save Melissa. But we all know how that ends up working out for her. And after that happens, Ty goes back inside to figure out what's going on, why it's taking so long. And she finds Van bleeding out on Melissa's floor, and she screams out in agony. Later, Ty and Shauna are driving in silence. Shauna tries to justify what happened, saying that she knew Melissa was a threat, and Ty tells her basically to shut the fuck up. She makes Shauna pull over, digs a grave, and she refuses to let Shauna help her. You're not fucking touching her. Which, good for you, Ty. I wouldn't have let her touch her either. And before she buries Van, she starts reflecting on all of the good times that they had together. And she tells Van that she's done forgetting. And then she cuts out her heart and takes a giant bite. Which, ew. But we end with Ty in a diner talking to Misty. And she says they all agreed to keep the past buried, but Shauna couldn't help herself. The journals, Adam, Melissa, it's all Shauna's fault. Even Natalie is Shauna's fault. Ty says that they forgot about everything that happened for way too long. She forgot that Shauna fueled what happened to them out there, but they can't forget that anymore because if they let this slide, that Shauna will be the last one standing. And she asked Misty if that's what Misty wants. And Misty's like, no, I definitively do not. And that is where we leave Ty in the adult timeline at the end of season 3. It is sad that Van is buried in an undisclosed location. I agree with you, Dustin. It makes me really sad to think about that. But, so what comes next? Let's talk about what's next for adult Ty now that we've made it through the overall recap. She's not okay, guys. Like, she's heartbroken. She's shattered. She's just lost the love of her life. And now she's teaming up with Misty Quigley, of all people. If that doesn't scream vengeance, like, I don't know what does. And it's pretty clear that Ty is 100% blaming Shauna for Van's death. And let's be real here. She's not wrong. If Shauna hadn't gone after Melissa, none of them would have ever followed her. They would have never ended up in that house. And Van might still be alive. That's not just regret level stuff. That's catalyst for a full-blown mental breakdown stuff. It's Ty versus Shauna now for the final showdown. I think that's where it's going to. Now, this could go one of two ways, in my opinion. Either Ty spirals further and lets her grief consume her, or the other Ty takes over completely. We've seen it happen when she's under extreme stress, and finding Van's body, that's as stressful and traumatic as it gets. We watched her literally fight herself for control at Melissa's house, but now that fight might be over. We could be looking at a future where other Ty is in charge for better or for worse, guys. And that version of Tai, I think she's going to burn some bridges, especially with Shauna. Because if we're being honest, Tai has been there for Shauna every step of the way. She helped her through her abortion attempt in the wilderness. She was there when Shauna gave birth. She helped cover up Adam Martin's murder without hesitation, knowing full well that if it was found out that she was involved, she could go to prison too. And she tied up Melissa without hesitation when Shauna asked. Tai has ridden hard for Shauna. And what has she gotten in return? A trail of destruction. And now, Van's death. So I'd say that Shauna just lost her strongest ally because Tai is done playing defense. I truly believe she's gunning for her now. And speaking of unexpected alliances, did you ever think we'd see Tai team up with Misty? I mean, come on. The idea of that pairing slightly terrifies me. Tai's got political pull. Misty's got access to every dark corner imaginable. And they're both kind of grieving right now. If that grief turns into anger, and let's face it, it already has in some instances, they could become a lethal force. Now, let's shift to Teen Tai for a second. What's her next move now that Natalie has called for help? It's interesting because Tai has always been Shauna's silent supporter out there, backing her decisions, keeping her secrets. But in the finale, we saw her call Shauna out. She pushed back. And that's rare, but that's important. And maybe it's because she's starting to see the bigger picture. Maybe Nat's bold move planted a seed. Tai even agreed with Shauna earlier that they shouldn't leave when Kodiak arrived. But if Shauna keeps acting like she's above the group's rules and keeps pulling these power plays, like Tai's not going to defend her anymore. But here's the thing. Shauna has taken Tai's loyalty for granted. And that goes for both timelines. But with Van gone and Lottie and Natalie's deaths as well looming over the adults, Tai might be snapping out of it and waking up. And what happens when she starts to just act, or when she starts to act instead of just follow? All I'm saying is if I were Shauna, I'd be a little nervous because this version of Tai, she has nothing left to lose at this point, guys. She just lost Van. She lost Simone and Sammy. She lost her seat as a senator. Like, what else can they take from her? I want to see when Tai goes to college. Wouldn't it be funny if she was rescued and went to college 2 weeks later? I would not want to be her roommate. No, I wouldn't want to be her roommate anyways. But before we wrap things up, I want to take a moment to talk about the ever-looming presence of other Tai. After rewatching the entire series again recently, yes, again, I honestly felt like I watched a completely different show. Like this time around, I found myself questioning everything. Like, when are we actually seeing Tai? And when is it other Tai really pulling the strings? We know that this version of her, the sleepwalking version of her, most likely surfaced after the crash, likely triggered by the insane levels of trauma and stress, which, considering the situation, is totally understandable. But other Tai isn't just a coping mechanism. She kind of seems like something darker than that. She's less reserved, more impulsive, and far more willing to do things that the real Tai would never consider doing. She seems drawn to the power of the wilderness, it. And unlike regular Tai, she's a believer. And I think that's why we usually see her emerge through sleepwalking. When Tai's guard is down, when she's the most vulnerable, that's when other Tai slips through. But over time, especially by the time we've reached season 3, It starts happening even when she's completely awake. That's when you realize that that's not just sleepwalking anymore. And let's be honest, in season 3, I think Other Ty is running the show the entire time until Van dies. And Van's death, that could absolutely be a catalyst that brings her back to that state. If Ty starts to crumble, if grief consumes her, Other Ty could step in to protect her in a way. A couple moments that I picked out that I attributed to being Other Ty, I thought I'd touch on for a second. The first one is actually pre-wilderness, and which really opens up the question, like, did that start in the wilderness or did that version of her exist before? But remember when Ty slide tackles Allie and breaks her leg in episode 1? That was calculated. Like, I definitely think there's a possibility that could have been Other Ty. Then there's the mystery of the pee bucket, which Ty herself points out and brings up. A lot of fans think that she did it and just doesn't remember doing it. Same with the cabin fire. It is 100% possible that Other Ty started that blaze and regular Ty just completely blocked that off. Which, quick side note, when I was doing research for this episode, I stumbled on a post pointing out just how often Ty references fire and burning in the show. In season 1, when Shauna confesses her affair, Ty says something like, if it's Randy Walsh, I'm going to burn this whole fucking town down. And during the campaign, she says she took a 15-year marriage and set it on fire. Then, at dinner with Van, they joke about burning the place to the ground. So, the signs have always been there. She's kind of tied to destruction, Other Ty. Another clear moment of Other Ty when it's time to get rid of Coach Ben. There's no way Ty could go through with that as her regular self. She dissociates and then boom. Same goes for Biscuit. His head on the altar, obviously Other Ty. And the word spill painted on her front door. Like we said earlier, she did that herself and for some reason wanted to make it look like Sammy did it. The darker version of Ty has been there all along, just lurking under the surface. But season 3 truly puts her on full display. And I don't think we've seen the last of her by a long shot. Now, I know I didn't list every instance we might be seeing Other Ty in control, but we hit on a lot of them throughout the recap. And what really fascinates me is how essential Other Ty is to Ty's entire journey as a whole. She is not a side effect. She is a part of who Ty is. And now with Van gone, I'm wondering, does Ty face the grief herself, or is Other Ty going to step forward again, this time maybe permanently? Because if that happens, then we're not just watching Ty's descent anymore. We're watching her transformation. All right, guys. I think now's the time where we wrap things up for the night. I've talked for way too long. Didn't realize that my notes were this extensive. But I think that we have officially covered Ty's arc and journey, and it's been quite a ride. Like I said earlier, Taissa is extremely complex and layered. Like, she literally developed an entire second personality just to cope with her stress and trauma. That is not your average storyline. It's wild, it's chilling, and it makes her one of the most fascinating characters on the entire show. So now I want to hear from you. What are your guesses for where things are headed for Ty, both in the wilderness and in the present day? Drop a comment and we can theorize together. And coming up in August, we'll be continuing this character deep dive series and shifting gears to the mystical, whimsical, and enigmatic Lottie Matthews. Now, we've officially reached the point in the series where I've covered every character still alive in the present day timeline. So now it's time to cover the ones that we've lost. There may be less speculation about their futures, obviously, but don't forget, we've still got 25 years of unknowns to explore between Rescue and the first season. So there's plenty of room for more character development in the past. As for season 4, still waiting patiently with no new news, no updates yet on when production will start or if the writer's room is even open. So it's all very much TBD at this point. But don't worry, once I hear something, you're going to know. And in the meantime, if there's a particular topic you want to hear me dive into, or if you want to join me for an episode and showcase your Yellowjackets knowledge, please reach out. You can find me on social media across various platforms. You guys know where to reach me, or shoot an email to yellowjacketshive@gmail.com. Lastly, thank you so much for buzzing in tonight and keeping me company. I love live streaming and getting to interact with other people. So, thank you for being here and keeping me company. As anytime I have an excuse to hop on and talk all things Yellowjackets, I will be here. Your support means the world, and it really does keep me going, and it's like the fire under my butt. You know what I mean? You guys keep me coming back. So, all right, guys. And with that, until I spill again.